I wasn't aware that I was growing up at Roughwood. I mean, of course I was living there, but it didn't mean anything to me. I'll never forget one night taking a taxi from the airport out there, and the cab driver just falls out of the car and says, "Is this a college?" I said, "No, it's our house." And I said, "What's so special about it? It's where I live, you know." It wasn't different for me. I think people today find it a little incredulous to how we used to live here and what went on, but it was life as we knew it. I knew that most of my friends probably didn't live quite the way I did, but they certainly all loved coming over here to play. Imagine a boy from the age of, 6 to 16, growing up on an 85-acre, it was actually a 100-acre farm we started, with all these animals and cows that I learned how to milk. And my mother had her horses there, and I had a goat, and we had pigs, and watching the pigs get slaughtered, and chasing chickens around and getting eggs, and talking to all these farmhands, most of whom were really interesting people. You know, what's any better than that? I was incredibly lucky to have experienced life here as a kid. When we moved in 1950, my parents reduced the staff quite a bit from what it had been in my grandparents' day. Our family was forced to make do with only one chauffeur, a butler, a houseman, and 8 house staff or maids who cleaned, made the beds, did all our laundry, shined our shoes, darned all the clothes, waited on table, and cooked all our meals. You know, you think, God, it must have been artificial to live there with all those people working there. Well, it wasn't. It was what, you know, I was kind of used to somebody doing my laundry and shining my shoes and filling my car with gas and, you know. My brothers and I were expected to wear coats and did wear coats and ties to every meal, including breakfast. But we couldn't complain because when my father was young here, they wore black tie or tuxedos for dinner every night, and if there were guests, they wore white tie and tails. Of course, fortunately, they had someone in the house to take care of all these clothes. Life here was never boring for me. I had friends over a lot, and we spent hours riding our bikes on the driveways, which in those days were gravel and were raked every single day. We spent a lot of time climbing around on the roof of this house, and I wouldn't go up there today for all the tea and china. I think we also probably climbed every tall tree on this property. I spent a lot of time with the various farmhands, gardeners, and greenhouse staff. I've generally found that as a group, they were more interesting than my parents and their friends were. I learned to be nice to all of the people who worked here. They were always nice to me. I learned a lot from them. I used to help the cowman milk the 13 Guernsey cows. It was all done by one guy by hand twice a day. Our milk, by the way, was not pasteurized. None of us ever suffered from that. We had a great big root cellar down under one of the sheds, and I used to love to go in there. There'd be 2 or 3 pig carcasses hanging there, bushels of apples, winter squash, pumpkins, and it had the most wonderful smell. I have no sense of smell anymore, but I can still remember exactly what the root smellers smelled like. When I got older and began to take up bird hunting with my brother and I spent a lot of time here shooting pigeons. It's kind of amazing to me today to think that we walked around here shooting small bore shotguns and occasionally 22s, and nobody apparently ever thought anything about it. Nobody ever complained. We were careful. We didn't, aim across the street or anything. But I used to walk across Woodland Road to River School until I went to Noble's in Dedham, where I boarded 5 days a week. I was very small when I was in school. I kept growing till I was about 22. And I actually ended up with more athletic letters than anybody in my class because I coxed the varsity crew for 6 years, so I got a letter for that. I managed the football team one year, and I managed the basketball team for a year. So I think I ended up with 8 letters, and all these great athletes in the class, struggling in football and hockey. I did what I could do. Not the most, but I'm pretty smart. I'm very intelligent. I did really well on tests, and I could do stuff. But I did what I had to do, and that was it. I was on the waiting list at Harvard till the middle of July, and finally I think my father called somebody, and I got in there. If you can't go through life and have fun, what the hell's the point of it? That's a gross generalization, but there is so much fun to be had. I'm a member of this club in Boston, the India Wharf Rats, and we meet once a month, and it was started in the 1800s by a bunch of duck hunters. And we basically go in and we drink a fair bit, and then we have this amazing dinner, and then everybody has to individually get up and tell a story or sing a song or do something. And it has, you could be sitting next to the president of the Bank of Boston. Who cares? It makes no difference. It's just pure enjoyment of life. But on the other hand, you got to be serious enough to do something. You got to, first of all, support yourself one way or the other. Well, the first job I had was at my family's bank when I was
I don't know how old I was, 16 or something. I worked there for a summer in the teller's office or something. So, I mean, that was the first paying job I ever had. I remember I got $40 a week for that. But you know, up until then, I was given the luxury of going to camp or going to a ranch, or I went to a canoe traveling camp in Canada for 2 summers. I went to Europe for 1 summer, and then I suddenly went and worked. And then once I was in college, I don't remember what I did sophomore year. Junior year, I had to go to a 6-week Army summer camp at Fort Devens. That was the pits. That was about the lowest 6 weeks of my life. The first day, we get in the barracks. You get out there in Fort Devens. So you get into your barracks, and you find your bunk, and you drop your stuff, and you take everything off, and you put on a poncho, and you went off for this whole day medical thing. Well, it was about as hot as it is today, and you're wandering around this black poncho, just black sweat coming out of you. And then I go back and I go to use the head, and I went down in the toilet in the barracks on the ground floor. There were 10 toilets next to each other, this far apart, nothing. And I said, you know, I'm not going to go to the bathroom for 6 weeks. I can't possibly do this. So I got my orders after I graduated, and I was commissioned, and my father gave me a lovely gold watch chain. He was so happy I'd been commissioned. And a lot of that just made me have the ability just to get up and do what I have to do, whether I want to or not. And I ran something called ration breakdown, which is where we would get 30,000 pounds of beef come in by railroad car every week, and it all got cut up. So I did that, and then I picked up as a secondary duty post-mortuary officer. I got the nickname Digger Dane, and I was actually fairly busy just doing that, because I probably had about a case a week. And the Army was very sensitive about dead people. They didn't want any screw-ups, because you get congressional investigations if you do. So everybody kind of left me alone, and which was fine. I got a commendation ribbon when I got out, and you know, I didn't screw up too badly. And I remember, though, the week before I went out, the colonel that I worked for, Colonel Hickson, he was an old drunk. He called me up and he said, "Now I want to talk to you about staying in the Army, Lieutenant. What can I do to persuade you?" And I said, "Well, can I ask a couple questions, sir?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What's my next duty station?" And he said, "Well, it's probably going to be," I said, "Would it be Vietnam?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, no, thank you. I don't think I want to go there." When I first met Sally, you know, I maybe took her out a couple times, wasn't anything. I was not big on girls. I just never had the exposure. I went to a boys' boarding school. So they took her out a few times, and then I went off in the Army. And I'll never forget, one weekend I came up to Boston to go to a wedding, and I never even called her, and she got somewhat perturbed. So much so that when I got out of the Army, she had decided she wasn't going to see me, and she'd arranged a date for herself every night for the first 2 weeks or something. So I called her up and said, "Let's go out." And she said, "Okay." So that took care of that. And anyhow, we started going out, and that was in July, and we decided to get married pretty quickly. I proposed to her on the sofa, and my parents had a suite at the Ritz Hotel in Boston, and she was actually living there. I had an apartment. So anyhow, she said yes, thank goodness. And we were going to get married the following June and announce our engagement at Labor Day. And she figured out wisely that I would never make it that long. So we moved it up, and we announced our engagement sort of the next day, and we got married in December. So that was fun. And you know, it's been great ever since. Once we were married, even before, I started going to Litchfield for Thanksgiving. Yeah. And we went there every year. We never had Thanksgiving. My parents didn't do much about Thanksgiving. It was a wonderful thing. The same cast of, you know, Sally's older sister, younger sister, and younger brother, and whatever spouses and kids. And Sally's mother just beat herself up cooking this amazing Thanksgiving.
They were tremendous family people. And we really had fun with your parents too, but my parents, they came from a totally different type of background. My family did not have the resources that Bert's family had. And I always have loved children, and I just thought to be married and have children of my own was just, and I never thought beyond that.
And she is a great mother. You really get it. Hattie was the firstborn, the oldest,
and Lucy, we just loved that name. I think you decided Daniel.
Right.
I went to There's a Daniel ancestor on my side of the family. He fought in the Battle of Port Royal, and as my son quickly said to me, "Which one, Dad?" There were three. I said, unfortunately, he fought in the one that we lost, but he managed to live. But as kids, they were funny because when they got a little older, the girls were sort of unmerciful to Dan, who was very small at the time. And they would say, "Dan, you pull us in the wagon now." So he would pull them up and down the driveway and up and down the street. And this would go on, and he'd say, "It's going to be my turn." "Yeah, you're going to get a turn." And they'd finally get to the end of it, and he'd say, "Well, it's my turn now." And they'd say, "Oh, no, we're bored. We're going to go do something else." So,
But Mommy has a popsicle for you.
Right. We're lucky. They're all, very good is a trite phrase, but they're all very good kids, and they're all intelligent kids, and they're curious kids at whatever different level it is.
And very respectful
Yes.
of us, which I think I appreciate.
And I'm proud of all of them. I'm struck by how ethical our kids are. And I just, in today's world, I just think that's so rare and it's so wonderful. So if I could say fatherhood is trying to instill a sense of good ethics in people and a sense of their own self-worth and the need to do something. I mean, I probably didn't do nearly enough in my life. God knows they're all doing a lot. But, have productive days. And unconditional love comes into all of it, with their kids and their friends and everything else. And I just think I really hope that our three kids, and I know they do now, hope they always continue to talk. I hope the cousins, and with the ease of communication now, with texting, I think that's important because that's really all you got. And you lose a brother or a family member, and you'd miss that. So.
I had known babies all my life. I had cousins, and I loved babies, and had babysat. But I don't think you'd ever had
No,
any.
I hadn't.
And you just kind of
I
did it.
And I was surprised, I guess, looking back on it, that
you're
just
very
sort
good
of
at it.
came, reasonably naturally to me. Occasionally you get mad at kids, and that's part of life. I think children have to know where the boundaries are and know when they're crossing them. We and our kids hug all the time, constantly, and Dan and the grandkids. And God knows, I don't think my father would have known how to hug me if he'd had to, Nor my brother. I shake hands with my brother,
But I come from a family of huggers.
Right.
And every time I say goodbye to our grandchildren, I say, "Oh, let's just have one more hug," because, and I always say to them, in life, you can never hug too much. And I do think that's true. It's just...
And the grandkids are terrific about it. I mean, they come up here and they all come running in right away with a hug for everybody. And that's just, boy, that's a great way to start a day. One thing that struck me about Sally's parents, to go back to the beginning, the first time I went down to Litchfield, Connecticut, we arrived at their house, and her mother and father are standing out on the front porch to greet us. And they were so pleased to see me. And my parents would have been in the depths of the house and would have sent somebody out to meet us, It's such a difference to me, and it's terrific. Up here it's so nice because we can basically let them do whatever they want to, and they get in these three boys come down the thing, get in a kayak, but they always put on their life preservers. They take off down the lake to go fishing, and I don't worry about it because same thing I did. Our attitude is this is everybody's, and they're gonna, if a little sand gets in the house, who cares?
Who cares?
Occasionally I revert back and sweep sand off the beach or something, but
but then everyone teases him, so
yeah,
enough of that. One of the things I love about this place is when the cousins are all here, the 8 of them all are here, and they don't always see a lot of each other, but boy, it is just like from 18 on down on to 9, they're just all picking right up and laughing, and it's fun. It's been great.
To make a marriage work, there has to be a lot of give and take, obviously. And, I don't always want to do everything Sally wants to do, and we don't always agree about everything. But at the end of the day, when you go to bed, you got to make up and be happy about it. You can't go to bed angry. It just doesn't work,
You have to give 100% to each other every day now. I mean, obviously everybody has their little disagreements, but
looking back, I might say, gosh, I wish I'd studied harder at Harvard and gone to business school. But, you know, I might not have met you, so that would. Yeah. Life is good.
Life is good. Love
It's better.
Love is better. Never stop hugging.
Right.
Never stop telling people you love them.
And find something interesting and enjoyable every day.
That's what I'd say. We
I
love
love you.
you.
We love you.
We love you all.